All right, hello everyone. Thanks for kind of logging back in and watching another video. I'm very proud to sort of be pumping these out pretty consistently at the moment, so I really do appreciate it. Now today I want to kind of go over lighting a dinner scene, especially night ones. We see dinner scenes across tons of different feature films, TV shows, short films, what have you. They're in a bunch of scripts that even I work on. And so I want to take a second to sort of show off a simple yet effective way to light these scenes as a cinematographer or even a gaffer. And heck, while this is more oriented for indie and smaller budget films, I do want to say that this technique is really just a smaller scale of what bigger productions do when lighting these kind of setups. Now I have two setups that I want to walk through that are from completely different projects, however do use the same sort of styled and designed lighting techniques. So taking the scene from the script and the location scout and talking through everything, we walked through blocking and oriented the characters in the most, how you would say, depth looking, most cinematic, if you will, positioning that would really add to the story and benefit visually. So remember, as a DP, you do have a little bit of say and should kind of suggest blocking scenarios based on one, depth of the room and lighting. So don't forget that. You can also move tables and things around most of the time on set and work with production design on that. Now that the blocking and everything like that is set, we can actually focus on lighting the scene. However, when lighting, it's nice to think about when you're inside of a room, what that room would look like naturally in real life. You know, dinner tables are a little more simple because most of the time you have a chandelier or overhead lighting that you would turn on at night when eating, especially with a family or another person, or even if you're doing work at a table, you're most likely going to have something that is an overhead source. So taking how it looked like in a real life scenario, we can use that sort of idea in our heads and create something that matches and is amplified. And for this scene specifically, we actually don't even have a chandelier or overhead light. So the best part about this is we get to fake it. Now creating our own source will not only give us the light we need, but the full flexibility to control it, right? As a cinematographer and a DP, you really just want the flexibility and control of your environment that you're shooting in. Now the light we used to act as our fake chandelier was the F22. This light is great, especially along with its lantern, and creates a really nice soft sort of pool effect of light. It really lands softly along our characters. Now the M22, it's great and really flexible, and I use it on a lot of sets. However, if you don't have one, you can use a traditional light mat, hang some type of diffusion and sort of in a dome-like fashion underneath the light mat, and then create a skirt with duvetine, and you can kind of get the same look as the F22. The F22 is designed actually off of that premise. So again, this lighting setup gives us a nice soft look that pulls around our actors and talent. However, when working with top light, you kind of run into the scenario where you could possibly create raccoon eyes, really dark shadows underneath the eye sockets of talent, crew, whoever it is. And that always isn't the best look. And so to kind of counteract that, we scoot the light just past their heads a little bit, so it acts like more of a backlight rather than a full-on hard top light. It would be soft in this scenario though because of the lantern. But that backlight creates a little bit more of a pretty backlight, less raccoon eyes, sort of evens things out in a nice way. Again, it's all about control. If you just use the regular top light, you don't get to move or direct that sort of practical light. Now for this one specifically, we're getting a little bit extra spill than I was really wanting on the table. So we took a little bit of a black flag and just cut off a little bit on the front edge of the table, just create a little bit more shape of contrast and shadow. Just, you know, helping with texture. Okay, now that the main talent is lit and we have a nice overall scene here, this is what kind of changes or differentiates the big dogs from the little dogs, is working with depth and kind of practical light filling the space behind the actors. So as you see, we have a really awesome PD setup here with stuff everywhere, and we want to kind of highlight that. So luckily for us as well, there's a window that we were able to shoot some light through. You know, being a nighttime scene, moonlight's really popular, or possibly a street lamp look. I'm personally not as crazy for moonlight, that blue look, so we went more for a street lamp, more of a white tone look, cool. And that gave us a nice streak across all of the kitchen supplies in the back and cabinets, and sort of a little bit of, you know, separating our background from the actors in a different world almost, really adding depth. And we were even lucky to have a little bit of a clock light on the stove in the back to kind of spark a little bit of interest in the back as well. This paired with a little MC that we hooked up to the stove vent with a nice little pool, just again, texture, interest, depth, like all these little things working together, the shining on the bottles in the back. We have things just happening, and it's a little more interesting than just only our actors lit and nothing in the back, right? You don't want like just a black background, you know, you want separation, you want depth. depth is a big word. Yeah, I mean, overall though, a couple little lights creates a beautiful dinner scene where even if there's another character on a chair over or across, we could shoot something that one was lit really softly and nicely for actors, but then has some nice contrast in the background as well. All right, let's jump into the next scene and scenario. I do want to say one more time that this is a completely separate project with a different script and director. However, I want to show off that we can use the same lighting techniques for a completely different project and it will still work. All right, boom. So we have another interior dining room night scene. This is again a 2-shot. However, I do want to show off that you can accomplish this with 3 people later in the video through another shot. But again, moving to thinking about how this environment would be lit in real life, we can obviously take that this house is much older and this is more of a timepiece than the first scene we looked at. So taking into that consideration, there would probably low-key be a very nice chandelier on this very nice table in this very old house. So off the rip, we already know that we want a nice overhead light that can accomplish a really nice soft look and a warm look as well. And for this case specifically, we were able to fake having a chandelier or light source above them and use the F22 again. I do want to say one more time that you do not need this light specifically. However, it is a great tool for scenarios like this. Now this fixture does really give us a nice pool of warm light on top of our 2 characters here. And again, it is pushed a little bit slightly back behind them to again, not create any raccoon eyes. It's a big goal for these night scenes for me specifically. So we get a little bit of kind of hair light as well. So that's always a good push too. And again, even with just this one light though, we have a nice look for our characters and our environment, and that is amazing. However, separating them from the background, we kind of want to fill in and light the backdrop as well. Now, luckily on the left, we have this beautiful window that we were able to use and work with PD to kind of construct beautiful shears that could give us a nice soft look of whatever light is being pushed through there. Sort of a nice thing to remember too as a DP, not only working with the director for blocking, but also PD for certain colors or shears or stuff like that to kind of add texture that will really help your image along with the environment. But going back to the lighting, in the window, we actually just had a tube light in this scenario, so not as strong as a fixture even so. And that was just taped at the very top of the window, pointing straight down into the shears sort of curtain and created a nice soft ombre effect. I do wish that the light came further down in the curtain than kind of depicted and shown, but still gave us a nice look and a little bit of different texture, you know, in the background, but it's not overplaying our original source. So the left side is taken care of and looks great. However, if we didn't have anything spilling into the back on the right, into that picture frame or even those little glasses, it'd be a little muddy and falling off, and we wouldn't have much separation from our character on the right to the background. So in order to kind of get some light on that area that looked natural, we just ended up raising the curtain more on his side of the frame, and it kind of allows the light to spill out onto the wall in the background, giving that separation that looks really, really good. We don't have as much of a backlight on him that I would have liked, but I think the separation and the colors of the painting really help do that for us. Now I will say the middle of the frame on this one is a little bit muddy and dark, and there is actually a black cabinet there that we maybe could have moved. However, even though there is no spill of moonlight that I maybe would have liked on that one, I think it still works because we're focused on the characters in the middle mainly, and it's not distracting us, right? There's nothing in the back that's really guiding our attention to the back of the room. Our focus is really on the characters. So I think in this scenario it works and plays fine, and having the sort of, pattern of light character, dark character, light works okay in this scenario. Again, if I had a little more information, great, but I think it plays just fine in this situation. All right, that is 2 nighttime dinner scenes broken down, and really just showing off that you can kind of create these scenes and match these scenes with just one major key light that's overhead and have a really nice simple look. As I mentioned earlier, I did want to show off another scenario where there's 3 people at the table. This one's actually during daylight, but again, we still have a fake sort of chandelier coming down, overall lighting them. That's a little more back towards our character in the middle here. And then the fun part about the daylight scenes, you get to work with a little bit more of a hard edge light from the sun coming in on this scenario specifically. But again, if this was taking place at dinner, you could use that overhead and just sort of maybe bring in a solid for the third person to kind of make sure shadows are good and clean. But lighting is a nice overall onto the whole table, so you can fill in the other characters very nicely as well. But yeah, that is how to light a dinner scene in a simple way, an effective way that even the bigger and larger productions do, maybe just using a couple of different fixtures and on a larger scale. But again, I think even with just this 1 or 2 lights in the background, we accomplish something that's very professional looking and really adds a lot of tone and mood to the story. So hopefully this video was helpful. I really do appreciate watching. And yeah, leave a comment on how you might light these scenes a little differently, or what techniques you use for overhead lighting. Yeah, really appreciate watching. Thanks. Okay. That was a lot of rambling. Hopefully